These things, these obstacles, these mistakes that seem to derail the majority of people who start a carnivore lifestyle and never make it past the first 30 days. Good morning, everybody. It's me, Mitch. Today I want to talk about a list of things that I put together after being on YouTube for 7 months, reading thousands of comments of people telling me why they failed and what derailed their efforts to establish themselves on a carnivore type of lifestyle. And I think it would behoove everybody, not only those of us that have been doing this, but especially people that are just thinking of starting. Because there are, and I'll use the word demons, that are lurking around every corner when you're trying like we are so hard to change what everybody thinks is the normal and accepted way of living and eating. So I've got a whole list of these things, and I'm going to go over them with you while I cook my breakfast. So I'm going to start doing that, and I'm going to talk to you about these things, these obstacles, these mistakes that seem to derail the majority of people who start a carnivore lifestyle and never make it past the first 30 days. Oftentimes never past the first week. So let's go. And I'm doing something different in this video. I actually have a list of these things taped up to my camera, kind of like a teleprompter, which is something I never do. And I am going to speak off the cuff about most of this stuff, but I do want to follow this list. So number one on my list is unrealistic expectations. And I think we fall into that trap, so many of us, because a lot of people really come on in comments and even go on to make YouTube videos overblowing, maybe puffing up a little bit some of the results they've had. And we've all seen those comments. And those comments say, I've been on this diet for 4 days. Every one of my medical problems went away. I've lost 15 pounds so far. Life is good. And here you come, and you go on the diet, and in the first 4 days, none of that stuff happened, and you seem to be spending all your time in the bathroom. And you write me a comment saying, what's wrong with me? This isn't working for me. Everybody else says that within 4 days, and I use 4 days facetiously, it's not true. It's not true. It takes time. You have major physiological changes that are going to happen to you. You have to put the time in. You're going to be tired. You're going to experience lack of energy. Many of you are going to have a bout with diarrhea as your gut biome revolts to the lack of the sugar that it usually loved. Have patience. Expect these things to happen, and if they don't happen, be pleasantly surprised. But don't have unrealistic expectations, and then you won't be disappointed. Number two, and I think this one it's one of my 2 main rules, and I think it's one of the biggest things. And that is, and you know what I'm going to say, stay off the scale for the first 30 days. If you think that you need the positive reinforcement of seeing the weight come off, and that's a realistic indicator of whether this is working for you, you're mistaken. You're going to have dramatic changes in the fluid balance of your body, at least for the first week or two. You can gain or lose as much as 3 pounds in a single day. It means nothing. It means nothing. And then coupled with my second rule of eating till you can't eat anymore, you're going to convince yourself that this diet is making you fat and you will give up. A major cause of people abandoning this before they even had a chance to get started. So first 30 days, who cares about weight? Your job is to just make sure you're never hungry. And that brings me to number 3. Number 3 is another major mistake. After a lifetime of being told, eat less, move more, watch your calories, watch your portion sizes, we come along and tell you, stuff yourself until you can't move. Everybody out there will tell you that that's foolish advice. We're trying to cure an addiction here. And you can't cure an addiction if you're always hungry and have cravings. So don't count calories. Don't keep track of how much food you eat. It doesn't matter. The more you eat, actually, in the first 30 days, the better, as long as you're eating the animal products that are perfect on the carnivore lifestyle. Counting calories will derail you as much as getting on the scale. There are no things to count, there are no things to measure, and that includes your weight and your calories. The fourth thing that might derail you is not eating whenever you're hungry. Because that's the way you're going to get through the first 30 days of this adventure, and that is never letting yourself be hungry. And again, this goes against all the advice that we've had drummed into our heads our entire lives. Don't eat, limit your food intake, eat smaller portions, just exercise more. And that's just exactly backwards, and yet we still, even knowing and even being told that you need to eat, and you need to eat a lot, you need to eat a lot of animal protein and fat, we tend to not believe it. We can't get this through our minds, and if we can't get it into our heads that this is what we have to do, we are going to fail. And fail we do. By the numbers we fail. Eat when you're hungry. Eat when you're hungry. Don't just snack. Eat. Eat until you're satiated. Eat a meal whenever you're hungry. You'll find you won't be hungry as often. But if you only eat a little snack, you haven't satisfied your hunger. You haven't set all those hormones in motion that are going to provide you with that feeling of satiety. And in the first 30 days, it's important to almost eat more than you need. Eat more than you need. Don't worry about whether you gain a pound or lose a pound. Almost universally, everybody loses weight anyway. So stop thinking about it. I know it sounds strange, but give up 30 days of your life and try this. What's the worst that could happen? And not eating when you're hungry leads to the next reason that people fail, and that is when they get a craving, they don't have any food prepared. They don't have anything they can dive right into and eat to kill that craving, nip it right in the bud. That uncontrollable urge to head for all the sugar that you've got everywhere in your house. hiding in every pantry, in the refrigerator, in the freezer, calling your name. Always have food ready to eat. Make hamburger patties, leave them in the fridge. Cook a bunch of bacon up in advance. Have food that you can grab, like an asthmatic grabs an inhaler. You have to have that food with you. If you go out of the house, take some with you in a baggie or something. Make sure you have something. Excuse me while I beat my eggs. Thank you. You have to have something ready to eat at all times. That's the way you're going to overcome your cravings. It's the only thing I've found that really works, and it goes along with all the other handy little tips that I'm giving you here today. So, have food readily available. The next thing that's going to derail your efforts is talking to people about what you're doing. Everybody you talk to about this is going to tell you, you're killing yourself, you're setting yourself up for a heart attack. Everybody knows that this stuff is bad. Not only are your friends and family going to tell you, your own doctor's going to tell you, everybody's going to tell you that this is not natural, abnormal. And yet, if you've gotten this far, you're learning just how natural, sustainable, and appropriate this way of eating is, because it's the way that our species has eaten for millions of years. Don't listen to anybody. Don't debate them. Don't try to sell them on what you're doing. This is something that everyone has to discover on their own. He has a desire to learn, the desire for the knowledge, is fed up with their current conditions, all their illnesses, realizes that maybe what they've been doing their whole life isn't the right thing to do. But don't become an evangelist for the carnivore diet in the first 30 days. Just do it and concentrate on yourself and keep it to yourself. Don't even tell your doctor. It is going to sabotage what you do. Another thing that people don't listen to that sabotages their diet is the failure to clean up their environment, to get rid of all of those tempting things that are always within arm's length 24 hours a day. Get rid of the cookies, the bread, the pastries, the pasta, the ice cream. Get rid of the frozen pizzas. Get rid of everything in your house. And if you have people living in your house that have to have that stuff around, see if you can't get them to show their love for you by keeping that stuff in their own personal space so you don't have to be exposed and not eating it in front of you. It's not a lot to ask of people. If you can't get the people that love you to make that one small concession for you, I can't help you, and chances are you're going to fail. Going along with that, I wrote here, failure to eliminate unhealthy food items from your refrigerator, pantry, and all that stuff. Yes, that is what you need to do. You need to get that stuff out of your life, your sight, and your reach. The next reason people fail also goes against one of the so-called tenets of healthy eating, and that is low fat. Low fat. And I guess along with that goes low salt, low sodium. Those two things, fat and sodium, just happen to be essential and necessary for a healthy human life. You should get at least 60 to 70% of your calories every day from animal fats. And you need an ample amount of salt and other electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and magnesium And if you don't get these things, especially the fat, you're not going to get satiated. It's the fat that causes the hormonal changes that lead you to the feeling of, I can't eat another bite of this. And you'll get that feeling, and it's a great feeling because you haven't even had to stuff yourself to do it. You haven't had to waddle away from the table to get that feeling. So make sure that you, and this is important, that you get enough fat, and there are many, many, many videos telling you how and what ratios you should have, but it may go against your grain, and you may think or may believe all those wives' tales, that all that stuff causes heart disease. That stuff actually reverses and cures heart disease. It's what we need. It's what our brains are made of. It is the reason you will heal. There's more fat than protein on this lifestyle, and that's why it works. So make sure you get enough fat. That's important, and it seems very unnatural for most of us when we're first starting on this, and not getting enough fat sometimes, or most of the time, will lead to you not feeling right, not having, any energy, and saying, this, I'm not feeling good doing this, without realizing it's not the carnivore lifestyle. It's that you're only living half of it by eating the lean protein. So that also leads to what I said earlier about snacking. And that is, whenever you start to eat something, it should become a meal. And you should eat no more than 3 meals a day if you have to, but most of us eat 1 or 2. And you should eat to satiety. It's very important that once you start that cycle of eating and that all the digestive machinery in motion, that you give it a full meal to deal with. You wouldn't run your dishwasher with 1 plate in it. You fill it up first and then run it. Maximize the benefit from that whole cycle. So when you eat, and maybe you can't do this all the time, but when you eat until, as Ken Berry says, you're comfortably stuffed. You'll find you won't get hungry. And along with the no snacking thing, the last mistake people make that I thought was significant enough to talk about today is the habit we're in of eating by the clock. We have the habit of eating by the clock. It's breakfast time. It's lunchtime. It's dinner time. You know that place for 30 days where you put your scale away so you wouldn't be tempted to weigh yourself? Put your clock there too. Get your cues from your body as to when the appropriate time to eat is, and that is when you're hungry. Not when you're stressed out and have an emotional craving to dive into a gallon of ice cream, but when you're truly hungry. Some people have a little mental test. They think of a food that they, really don't like all that much, but if they were starving, they'd eat it. And give yourself that test. With me, it would be some of these extremely smelly kinds of cheeses. I wouldn't touch them normally. But if I was starving to death, I'd gobble them down. So say to yourself, am I hungry enough to want to eat this? And if the answer is yes, that means you're hungry. When you're hungry, eat. When you start eating, keep eating. Stop when the food that you're eating stops tasting as good as it did the first bite. And you naturally feel, I've had enough. I'm comfortably stuffed. And if you do this for a few weeks, you'll find that your natural hunger cues have been screaming at you all along, but you've been so sugar poisoned and addicted that you've never heard them. And you hear them loud and clear, believe me. So, forget the clock, not just for a month. You'll settle into a schedule of eating that, like I have 2 meals a day. I start getting hungry late morning, and I wait 3 or 4 hours after that meal, and I say I could eat a second meal. You could make the mistake of not eating enough because you'll be amazed that your hunger is gone. But these mistakes, this list that I've just gone over of things that will derail you, are things that you need to become familiar with if you want to succeed. If you break or ignore any of them, they all have the potential to sabotage what you're doing, and it's important to look out for all of them. So, before it gets cold, I'm going to take my bacon and eggs here, 4 strips of Wright's bacon, 5 big eggs, and I'm going to eat it, and then I'll eat again in 3 or 4 or 5 hours, and that'll be it for me for the day. I went through this just like you're going to go through it. If you're doing it already, remember these points. If you're just starting, write down a list of these points and put it under a refrigerator magnet or something. And with that, I'm going to give you the rest of the day off and eat meat.